We have evolved for millennia, and young people everywhere in the world are born these fonts of creativity. And that is sort of the human genius. And we collaborate and we use tools. Yes, we do use tools. AI is a new tool, but is it so powerful that it will be too intrusive that it erodes the core of who we are as humans?
Welcome to Any Insights Yet? The podcast that explores the intersection of strategy, inspiration, and branding. I'm Chris Kocek. Now, if you've been listening to the show for a while, you know that many of my guests are creative directors, strategists, and entrepreneurs. But every season, I like to save space for one or two wildcard interviews. Conversations with people outside of the industry who have something valuable to say about how we think, how we behave, and how we engage with the world around us. In season 2, I interviewed Alina Burrows, a forensic science expert from the hit show Crime Scene Confidential, because I wanted to explore the overlaps between marketing and murder. Earlier this year, in season 3, I spoke with Asaf Eshet from Clixo Toys because I wanted to connect the dots between toy design, the power of play, and creativity. And now to finish off season 3, I have another wildcard guest, Rebecca Winthrop. She's a senior fellow at the Brookings Institution and a co-author of the Disengaged Teen, a book that explores why so many high school students are tuning out and what it actually takes to get them re-engaged. I first heard Rebecca on the Ezra Klein podcast back in May, where they talked about the need to rethink the purpose of education. And I was so intrigued by her research around engagement that I reached out to her to see if she would join me on Any Insights Yet. It may seem like a strange pairing, advertising and education, but to me, Rebecca's work isn't just about education. It's about attention and curiosity. And the challenges teachers face in the classroom are many of the same challenges we face in branding. We cover a lot of ground in this interview, including classroom design, what we can learn from Minecraft, and the recently announced Mattel OpenAI partnership that has Rebecca excited and concerned about where that might lead. But to get things started, I asked Rebecca if there was one data point or key finding that came out of her research that really surprised her. You did a global study on education and learning that included over 100 in-depth interviews and a survey of 65,000 students. Was there a particular data point or an observation that someone made during those interviews that made you go, wow, that's interesting?
One of the sort of takeaways, I would say, that I was not expecting was how much kids, quote unquote, the problem children, we call them kids really stuck in resistor mode, how much they've got going for them, actually. They have a lot of agency. And actually, if they can just get the right conditions around them, so often they turn around really quickly and end up being incredible.
What are some of the things they have going for them that stood out to you?
So kids often get labeled the problem children when they disrupt class clown, don't listen to the teacher, take long bathroom breaks, don't do the assignments, speak up, disrupt, skip class, don't show up at school. And so these aren't things that we families nor educators love. However, these kids have a fair bit of gumption and chutzpah because whatever it is that isn't working in the classroom school environment, they're making it known that it isn't working for them. They don't necessarily have the language because they're kids, and kids don't necessarily have articulate paragraphs about what is not working in this context for me. But they're giving you the behavioral signs, sometimes the verbal signs, and it can be inappropriate. And you want to make sure kids have behavior modeling and expectations for how to treat other people. But, they're not passive kids. They're not passengering, coasting through life, being really compliant and apathetic. And they actually have a fair bit of agency. It's just pointed away from their learning. So that's what they have. And if you can point it towards their learning and give them a little boost, they often take off.
Well, to connect it back to branding for a second, I feel like disruptors in the classroom can potentially become big disruptors in the branding space, right?
Absolutely.
They see what's not working. They see what's ridiculous. They poke fun at it. They come up with a whole new brand or innovation or messaging style that gets people's attention. So it doesn't work well in school, though.
Right. The classic Steve Jobs, etc. The resistor mode kids who are sort of resisting what is traditionally asked of young people, often are super creative and are really energetic and interested in the world and feel confined by the traditional model of schooling. We've had one young man who's a character in our book, The Disengaged Teen, called Tevin, and he described it as being in an airtight container with no oxygen. That's how he felt. He was really classic resistor mode kid. But then actually when he got to a different type of school model that gave him a lot more agency, he took off. And he was like, I finally felt like I could breathe. There was air.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's this tension in society, right? Where you've got students who are told on a daily basis, you're unique, you're special, all of these kinds of things. And then school, and I hope I'm not making any enemies when I say this, but school often is about conformity. Conform to this model, to what we say to do and how to do it. And there are plenty of kids who are just like, what happened to me being special and doing things in a different and unique way? Were there any other surprising things that you uncovered about how teens actually learn or learn in the best possible way?
This is a personal one because I had to reform my parenting strategies. I have two boys. I was surprised by the brain research around nagging, parental nagging, which I have been known to do. And there was this incredible study that really made me think, oh my gosh, where they did brain scans of kids listening to different scripts of their mothers saying things. And one script was their mom nagging them, saying one thing that bothers me about you. And then they would talk about whatever it was that was normal for them. And in every case, when kids heard that nagging piece, the problem solving part of their brain shut down. So really, when we nag our kids to do things, for example, I was really busy nagging my middle school son to do his homework when he came home. Did you do your homework? Have you done your homework? When are you going to do your homework? What do you have homework? What's going on? And he would procrastinate. And we found this actually to be very common, sort of parents stuck with their kids in this procrastination nagging loop from hell. And I realized, oh, I'm making it worse. I'm not helping because every time I nag, I'm taking away actually his autonomy, his ability to make a plan and to act, and shutting down the problem solving part of his brain. So I've had to change my ways.
Yeah, that hovering aspect. We want the best for our kids. We also don't want them to stay up until some super late hour being like, oh, I just remembered I need to do this thing. So we tell them again and again. But really, every time we do that, we're not letting them develop that little voice inside their own head to do it and get it done. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yes. Parents nag out of love of their kids because they care. If they didn't care, they wouldn't nag. And we talk about this in the book, and we talk about what you do instead, which is, do you have homework? Yeah. What's your plan for doing it? Because we have dinner at 6 and you're going to go to bed at 10 lights out. Like, that's it. And if you decide at 9:45 to start, you're still going to bed at 10.
Natural consequences.
Better luck next time. Try it again.
Yeah. Well, it helps them develop that executive function so that they can start to map out their day and make their plans and things
and
like
feel
that.
like a little more agents of their own lives.
Well, here are some data points that jumped out at me from your book, The Disengaged Teen. In third grade, 75% of children say they love school. But by 10th grade, just 25% say that. Why do you think that is? What are the top 3 things that contribute to that disturbing slide between third grade and 10th grade?
I actually think of all the data we have in our book, which is a lot, that to me is the saddest data point we have, because kids love learning. They're born to love learning. They love seeing their friends and being around other kids and other people and being exposed to ideas and being involved in their communities. So it's not the kids that are the problem. It is our educational structure, and it has a lot to do with, as kids get older, they enter, adolescence, early adolescence in particular. So it really drops off when kids enter middle school and just sort of takes a nosedive throughout high school. And that's in large part because what kids are evolutionarily, neurobiologically primed to do is to get out and explore and make connections with the world and find their tribe and figure out how to contribute to it and figure out how the world works. And a lot of times, the structure of school doesn't let them do that. It becomes more subject discipline and narrow and siloed. So you go from one teacher to many teachers. It offers more freedom, but doesn't necessarily offer the commensurate amount of freedom that kids would need when they enter adolescence. And the learning and instruction often becomes much more focused on academics because the traditional goals have been prepare kids for higher education, which makes sense. But you can focus on academics and connect what they're learning academically to why it's relevant in the real world and what kids would do with their knowledge and know-how and skills. And that's the piece that is often missing.
I have a book that I read to my kids when they were little called If I Built a School by Chris Van Dusen. It's a story of, the way the rhyme scheme goes. He's like, if I built a school, I would have a cafeteria that looked like this, and I would have a rocket ship. It's quite fantastical, but it provokes that question, which I've actually brought back to my kids over the years, which is like, what does your perfect day look like? Assuming that we all have to learn something because we all have to contribute something to the world to some degree, right? That we can't just do nothing all day and eat sweets, but like assuming certain things, what would your ideal day look like? What would be the spacing of different activities, and how much downtime would you give yourself between periods of learning and things like that? And so I try to bring that back to them, but it all started with that book, If I Built a School.
I love that.
Do you feel like there's a difference between loving school and loving learning?
I think that they can sometimes be the same, but often they're not. We know in COVID, kids really missed school. It was terrible that they couldn't go to school, and what they missed were their friends. It's not actually that kids don't like school. They don't like what they do in school, is what we found from the qualitative research. So there's plenty of kids who are happy to see their friends, but don't really like the work of school, what they're doing in school, but are learning like crazy and love learning things outside of school. We found that a lot. Learning how to skateboard and do a flip and a trick, that is intensive learning. Watching YouTube videos over and over, trying it again and again, getting feedback from their friends out in the skate park, or learning to bake, or even academic stuff, learning robotics. Like there's all types of things that kids love to learn who are not loving what they do in school, not loving the content of their lessons in school.
So the format makes a big difference.
Yeah. Just because a kid doesn't like school doesn't mean they don't love learning, is I guess what I'm trying to say. And in fact, every kid is a good learner. They're just not necessarily a good learner in the way we want them to be.
Yes. My son loves Minecraft. He loves Minecraft videos and watching other people create things. And then he creates things. And I can't play Minecraft to save my life. I usually fall into oceans and I get attacked by zombies.
Got a Minecraft lover in our household too. And they're learning a ton, actually. They're like strategy. Oh, I've got to get this and I've got to amass that and I need more food, or, there's a lot of strategic thinking. And the reason I like Minecraft so much is it's open-ended. You can create whatever you want. You're not in a very narrow structure. So it's super creative, but lots of strategic thinking. Oh, I got to run faster. Oh, it's getting dark. Oh, I want to build a teleportal. I need X, Y, and Z. Maybe I should collaborate with the villagers, whatever.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I tell him, I say, look, you've got a really amazing ability to see that in your head and then build it. That's a really amazing skill. And so I try to let him know that, like, I'm really amazed at what he makes. So we're learning all the time, and learning is one of the most commonly used words in education. And yet I feel like this is a word that is perhaps one of the most misunderstood. So here's a really deep philosophical question for you in multiple choice format. Okay.
Okay. Multiple choice, my favorite form of assessment.
Is effective learning something that's measured, remembered, felt in the body, or is it something else entirely?
What about, let's add option or D, all of the above? I would say D, all of the above. You should measure learning and can measure learning in many different ways. I would say a lot of learning of what goes into learning is not measured. But certainly, if you have a powerful learning experience, you're going to remember it. And sometimes it is often felt in the body. It's like a surprise. Humans are really good at their brains noticing things that are counterintuitive. And that's what sort of sparks curiosity. Wait, what? Like, I don't understand that. I didn't think that, because we're busy, being pattern recognition machines as we wander around the world. And when something doesn't quite click in the pattern we thought we were going to see, that's when we get curious and dig in. So if you remember something you were curious about or surprised at, it is a visceral feeling often, and we can remember it. Remember when you asked me, oh, was there something that surprised you about the book research you did? I do remember what surprised me, because I was surprised, and that was a good learning moment.
Yeah, it's like when you come across treasure or something, you're like, oh my gosh, I found this little nugget, this little gem. This is so interesting and so unusual. And I love that you just said the phrase pattern recognition machines. When I give talks to students and at universities and stuff, I say, we humans are pattern recognition machines.
Oh, well, there we go. See, Chris, that's why we hit it off.
Yes. But sometimes our pattern recognition software goes a little haywire and we see patterns where there are none.
Yes, true. Or wrong patterns.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Enter the field of psychology. Yeah.
Yes. And that is the tricky part, though, with branding and with business, and maybe even to some extent with learning at school, is that in my world, clients, they want the right answer and they want it now. They want it fast. And you say, well, we're going to have to go on this discovery process to figure out some things. We need to figure out what's true, what's not true. We may end up in a couple of dead ends. We may follow a particular lead and say, you know what? There's really not a big, deep human truth there. Let's back out from that and go pursue something else. But it's like, no, we got to move. We got to move. Can we move faster?
And I feel like schools, but also technology, have conditioned us to stop reflecting. I feel like reflection is missing so much. And I don't even necessarily mean like the contemplative type of reflection, like I have to go be a Buddhist now or something and reflect. I mean, just like what you said, you're talking about clients who want, I'm assuming, a really clever, good branding campaign for their product. It would really, really behoove them to take a moment and reflect to get it right before they roll it out. And you're saying, you know what, often you're running into, they're so anxious that they've sort of lost the patience to reflect. I think reflection makes people uncomfortable sometimes, but also, is it just they've sort of caved to this idea that like everything has to be immediate and speedy, otherwise we're going to lose? Or is it like competition? Like, what is it?
Well, I have some thoughts on that, and I'd be happy to share a couple of those thoughts. One is the fear factor that basically somebody else is going to do it before we do. It's a competitive world and everybody's mining for insights, trying to get, that competitive edge. Another thing is there's an incentive structure in corporations that say you get this bonus if we do XYZ thing. And so that speed, you just got to go for it. Don't spend too long thinking about it, just go. And then I think too, there's certainly a structure in marketing where a lot of times media gets purchased pretty far in advance of the actual creative content running. And so it's like, if you've already bought the media, then you've already baked part of the brownies, if you will, right? Like now you've just got to create content that's going to fit those media channels.
Right. It's a little bit backwards. I do think that unintentionally schools are setting up learning as competition, right? Like who gets the top grade? Who's the valedictorian? Who's the top of the class? Who's going to go to the best school? Who's going to get the scholarship? Who's going to get on the varsity team? Whatever. And it would be nice if we could socialize our next generation into different forms of working together to solve problems that are more collaborative, bake in a little reflection time before we launch into things. I wonder if that would even make a difference if once they go out into the world of work, sort of the incentive structure, they could move within it differently. I don't know.
Okay, so I've never had a guest do this before, Rebecca. So this may be a little strange. It may work, it may not. But I was wondering if you could humor me for a minute, and it's a bit of a guided meditation.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask you if you could close your eyes for a moment and describe for me a middle school or a high school classroom in America today. What does it look like inside? How many students are there? Where are the students? What are they doing? Where's the teacher? What's the teacher doing? Any other details that are important?
This is hard for me, Chris, because I study education innovation. So I think what you want is like, what's a common average?
Yes.
I think a common high school today, you have the classroom, but even more important is sort of the schedule. So you're in a class, you might have some chair desks, or you could have some tables that kids sit at. But certainly in one part of the classroom, there will be a place for the teacher. There will probably be a blackboard. There'll probably be lots of things on the walls, colorful, maybe some positive messages, but also posters around the content of whatever the classroom is, books, different materials. And you are only there really for like 45 minutes. So you're sort of busy, hopefully engaged in something you're doing. A lot of classrooms have a mix of direct instruction and question and answers in high school. And maybe there's some presentations of kids. They'll be writing, they'll be taking notes. A lot of classrooms have Chromebooks. Google's in about half the classrooms in America. A lot of classrooms, kids might be playing Minecraft unblocked on their Google Chromebooks because you can get any video game out there in an unblocked format that bypasses the school protections. How is that? Can I open my eyes now?
You are more than welcome to open your eyes, and you will have been transported to a classroom from the 1960s. No, I mean, I know there have been some changes, right? Obviously, there's Chromebooks, and there's sometimes now they're clustering the desks together instead of just everybody facing in one direction. But what is it about this average classroom design or very common classroom design that we've had for over 100 years that encourages students, which, as you describe in your book, to get into passenger mode, right? Where they're just coasting. They're not particularly engaged. Is the design forcing passenger mode?
It's interesting because I do think it might look somewhat similar, like the structure is similar, little sort of rooms that kids go in, and then the bell rings, usually literally a bell, and then they have to hurry, close their stuff, get their stuff, and go to the next classroom. I was in a school recently that, they'd moved from a 90-second passing period, literally 90 seconds to get from one class to the next. Like you don't even have time to go to the bathroom, high school. To a 3-minute passing period. That it's usually a bit more than that, but it's not true that sort of 100 years ago, classes are exactly the same as they are now inside. Teaching and learning is somewhat different, but I do think that part of what really drives what schools look like is how learning is assessed. And it just like our conversation about your branding campaign and why they don't want to take a pause for a moment and get the right answer before they launch their campaign. Your clients are not bad, silly people. They're just responding, as all humans do, to the incentive structure they're in. And educators are supposed to get kids onto grade level. That's what educators are supposed to do. And if you come in and 2 months you're at grade level, then the rest of the time educators are going to spend helping kids who are below grade level get on grade level, because really what they want at the end is all kids are on grade level. So there's a lot of kids who are really, really bored in school because it is very hard for a classroom teacher to do really deep, they call it differentiated instruction. Like everyone can go at kind of their own pace and sort of do their own thing as it suits them. That's really difficult with a large group, and a lot of teachers have large classes. So I think that sort of is the central problem. It's a bit of a design problem.
Well, the point you make about measurement is very interesting, because one of the things I talk about with people about brands is whatever measurement system you put in place will either result in brand scoliosis or alignment. And if you're measuring the wrong things, you're going to make your marketing channels kind of go a little bit out of whack. You're going to say, oh, clicks are really important. We care about clicks. Well, clicks is not the end all be all. People will click on things, but if they don't actually end up buying anything, then the click was kind of worthless. You have to measure all the right things. And it sounds like you've got mass education, and what we need is a system of mass personalization. Is that fair?
I don't think you want all schools to just be pathways for individualized learning, because schools perform a lot of other functions that are around learning to live together with people who are not your family or your neighbors. Schools are the main institution we have in virtually every community across the country where young people are learning to live together with people who aren't their family or their neighbors. And that is important for society. It's important for their personal growth. It helps them in the workplace because, again, you go out to the world, you don't just work usually. So it prepares them for life and being good community members and our society. And so there's lots of things you should do in school that are collective or help kids to, have space to learn to do that. But within the sort of mastery of core curriculum, it would be helpful if young people could go at their own pace, because this would help the kids who get stuck in passenger mode because they're bored to tears. And we found that there are many, many kids across the United States that are bored to tears in passenger mode, basically coasting, doing the bare minimum. They might like school and they might have stray days. So it's really hard for parents to tell. Grades only tell part of the story, but they are not loving learning and they're not learning to their full potential, and they're just kind of coasting. And if they have some agency and some gumption, they might slip into resistor mode pretty quickly. If their personality is like, okay, let me try to be a good kid, I'll just tough it out. But it can also be sapping kids' agency and interest.
Now, I'd like for you, if you wouldn't mind, again, closing your eyes again.
Oh my gosh. Okay, here we go.
And compared to that traditional school environment that you described, I'd like for you to describe the ideal learning space that would really activate what you call explorer mode in your book, where students are curious, engaged, self-motivated, reflective learners. And you can describe whatever tools, technology, and arrangement come to mind.
Well, I have lots of ideas and examples. I'm going to give one example of a school that is a high school. It's a small school. They call it a micro school. It's in an office building in an urban setting. And it has a big common room area with couches. And then there's basically what were conference rooms converted into classrooms around sort of the common area. And then there's offices, different offices for staff. Kids all have some sort of a laptop. They are tracking sort of their assignments on this laptop, but most of the time their laptops are closed because they're often working on a project. Now, sometimes their project requires a laptop, like making a video, but oftentimes they're working on a project like designing a floating city to make sure that, as the environment changes and we all become underwater, the coastal areas that are probably going to be flooded soon could float. And so they are looking things up online, and then they're coming back to their team. They're doing it as a group, and they're debating. And then they go out and they take a field trip and they look at the sort of inner workings of city plumbing in the city they're out to get a sense of what that entails and go back and do more research. So it's a lot of marriage of knowledge acquisition to knowledge application. Can I open my eyes?
Absolutely. I hope that trip to that micro school in your mind was an enjoyable one.
It was. I saw it. I was like, yes, that's a recent school I've been to.
And where is that school, did you say?
There's a series of them across the states. It's called Templeton Academy.
Templeton Academy?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, very good. If we know from learning science, the learning science literature, that the 1 teacher to 30 student classroom is maybe not as effective as it could be or as ineffective, why do you think we're still doing things that way? You mentioned assessment and measurement. Are there 3 beliefs you think that we have in our culture that are holding us back from making that ideal learning space that you just described a more common reality?
I think that most of the barriers to making that idea that we talked about a reality are in our minds. It's basically dominant logic. This is how it's done, so we think this is how it's done, and it's hard. And this is human nature. There's nothing unique in education. It's human nature. if you're used to doing things a certain way, that's how you think. It's hard to break out. And I think there's great proof points. Big picture learning is another example where they have high schools, public high schools, and they go to school 3 days a week. And then 2 days a week, the high school students are doing workplace learning for all 4 years. And then they're reflecting every week. They have a same little advisory group of kids with a teacher, same teacher that they stay with for 4 years, kind of their little family, their home base. It's a little bit of a reflection time, speaking of reflection. And they every week reflect on, sure, the classes they had on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but more what everybody learned when they were at their workplace. Because sometimes kids learned, I remember visiting one and a kid was like, oh my gosh, I hate my internship this year. She was working in a cafe, which she thought was going to be fun, ends up being hard. And the advisor said, okay, well, just because something is hard doesn't mean we're not learning something from it. What is something you learned from your semester of working in the cafe? And she said, well, I'm really good with people now. I can talk to any person, which is an amazing skill, right? She's like, annoying people, old people, young people. So all they did is imagine a different way to do it. And there's nothing in the current structure that's stopping us from doing that everywhere.
We've got these large systems, right? Systems on systems on systems. And I feel like when you look at schools that are playing with or tweaking or trying to experiment with the structure of the day, the structure of the classroom, schools like Alpha Schools, which has been written a lot about recently, where they've got the 2-hour core academics part of their workday or their school day. What you're kind of getting at is possibly shaking up later blocks in society, right? Why do we have the 8-hour workday? When I think about education, what I learned back when I was in college was that the school system was basically put in place as a kind of glorified childcare system. I know it's more than that, but it's like parents are going off to work. They're going to be working in industrial jobs and factory jobs and things like that. So you need a place to put the kids. Where are the kids going to go? Oversimplification.
Definitely. But I'll come back to that.
But like, there's that whole piece. And if kids start to like think, oh, maybe I don't need to be in school for 8 hours a day. Maybe I can just do this for 2 hours and do this over here for a few hours, or I could go to school 3 days a week. I mean, right now in jobs everywhere, people are like, can't I just work from home 2 days a week? And businesses are saying, no, you have to come into the office. So it feels like schools kind of prep people for the lifestyle that exists in the professional world. And if we start shaking up the school system, we're going to shake up the rest of society.
Well, you just put your finger on a very deep question. Much has been written and much has been debated. The purpose of school. And I want to come back to your sort of version of why we started schools as childcare. So first off, the current education system we have in the US and virtually everywhere around the world has a huge, important function and purpose that is around pastoral care, caring for children. So it is a childcare function, but it's also sort of looking after the well-being of children and helping them develop. And so largely women can go into the workplace. And it is really the only subsidized, government-funded, large-scale childcare system that we have. So it is an important purpose. We saw during COVID how not having that purpose fulfilled screwed everything up and was incredibly hard for dads, but a lot of times for women who always end up taking an extra burden of childcare and household duties. So that's one purpose of school, but that wasn't sort of the main purpose. Let's wind back to the common schools movement in the mid 1800s. That wasn't sort of the main purpose of this group of activists saying we need a common schooling experience across America. We need secondary education, et cetera. Because before then it was really hodgepodgey, little one-room schoolhouses here, different technical things here, apprenticeships. It was just a whole hodgepodge of things. One of the main arguments for the Common Schools movement was, if we don't have a common schooling experience, we will not stay together as a country. We are a new nation, not even really 100 years old yet. Remember, we're winding back to the mid 1800s. That's why we had the Pledge of Allegiance, love of a country and be citizens who are connected together without some sort of shared educational experience for the young people who will grow up and lead our country moving forward. So it was really the civic purpose of school, this idea of learning to live together. Every culture has their norms about society and it's taught certain ideas and beliefs. So that was really at the core. There's another argument, though, that certainly says, the reason we have an 8-hour school day and bells and all this stuff is because of wanting to train laborers for the manufacturing floor. It's sort of a structure that really is looking at building compliant citizens. Now, that's a very critical theory, saying actually we might have started the Common Schools movement talking about the civic purpose, but then it quickly became sort of manipulated now to create very compliant citizens and people who would not question sort of work environments that they went into and were accustomed to following the instructions very well, not being resistors. So there is a fair bit of compliance built into it. And there's a fair bit of truth in that perspective as well. Absolutely.
It's complicated. I did not know about the Common Schools movement. I like that concept.
We've lost our way a bit on that. I think we might need a updated 21st century version of a Common Schools movement, which has more to do with the civic purpose of school and young people and what does it mean to be a member of a community and a state and to be one country, not 50 countries.
With this idea of schools and learning and this other word that we started talking about, curriculum. We talked about learning a few minutes ago. I want to explore this word curriculum with you. To my understanding, it's a Latin word. It means a running course or a race course. And in education, curriculum refers to a planned sequence of instruction. So when I hear the word curriculum, it sounds kind of static, actually. It sounds linear. It sounds a bit institutional. It sounds like, okay, we're going to be on some sort of track. Like, here's the curriculum. I, the teacher, am going to implement the curriculum. And that's usually also decided at the district or state level about what's important for you to learn. You're going to learn these things. And you are the students who are going to learn or memorize what's already known. And you're going to answer these questions on a test that demonstrates that you have good working memory. Are there any other words or phrases in English or any other language in all the research that you've done that you feel like capture how dynamic the learning process really is compared to what I feel is the more static word curriculum?
I agree with you. It is often sort of documented. It takes a long time usually to develop, but every country has a curriculum or every teacher needs a curriculum because you kind of want to know what you think young people need to know. They need to know some things. Like we have learned some things, history. We know like 2 + 2, what that is. Like, people have spent lots of time figuring out how things work. Photosynthesis, without sun, your plants won't grow, right? Like there are things that we want kids to be able to know. And a part of education is passing on knowledge, a piece of it. And curriculum is often sort of we talk about it as like a scope and a sequence. Like what are the things that we think kids really should understand and know? And like, how do you break it up? Because often things build on each other. I was going to say, let's go write an essay in German, Chris. You're like, I don't know German. I was like, okay, whoops, wrong scope and sequence. We got to learn German first, right? Before we can write an essay. It's important. And often what happens is the curriculum are very high level. So the dynamism comes in how teachers teach the pedagogy, the lessons, like what they do to bring that curriculum to life. They're sort of usually very high level sort of goals. And you can do all sorts of things, creative things, to help kids master that. So I don't have the same reaction you do to sort of curriculum sounds very static. That is probably because I'm more on the inside. Though one thing I will say that I've always sort of had a problem with is that what's documented as sort of the learning course is only one part really of what kids learn in school, because we are not knowledge receptacle machines. We may be pattern recognition machines, but we're not knowledge receptacle machines. There was a wonderful theorist in education who called this banking education, this idea that we're like little ATMs just waiting for a deposit. That's actually not how learning works. We are experiential machines, and often there's a hidden curriculum that kids are learning right alongside the documented curriculum. So this is an example from West Africa, where when I worked there, we did a lot of work on basically gender equality, because girls in particular, they didn't necessarily always get to stay in school or weren't sent to school versus their brothers, etc. That was part of the curriculum, the documented curriculum. And teachers would teach it, and would, there'd be lessons about it. And then when lunchtime came, kids get fed because they have to walk pretty long distances to schools. They get fed at school. All the male teachers would go and have a smoke break, and all the female teachers would clean the cafeteria and then help with the cooking and do all this extra work. So on the one hand, they're learning about gender equality, but the hidden curriculum is like, oh no, men take a smoke break, and women who are teachers, trained teachers, do double duty, do extra work, and they do the cleaning of the school and helping with the food and stuff. So that undermines very much your documented teaching about gender equality, your hidden curriculum, the norms, the ways people treat each other, why there's schools in rich communities are so gorgeous with like full bands and instruments, and you go to a school in a poor community and they have like one little violin that they all have to share. Like, yeah, we can say we're all equal and all, but no, we're not.
Yeah, I mean, that's fascinating, the idea of the hidden curriculum. If that's not a book title, I think it should be. There's a quote that I remember learning years ago, which said, all television is educational television. The question is, what is it teaching?
Yes, exactly. Kids are learning all the time. They just might not be learning what we want them to do, and might not be learning the documented curriculum.
Exactly. That really sticks with me. And that quote really stuck with me. And another book that I read when I was in college was called Lies My Teacher Told Me, which looked at the way history textbooks were written and the quite incredible variability across history textbooks. And you're like, but this is supposed to be the study of facts in history, and yet there's wild variations. I just wonder, because some words, they get baggage over time, right? So like you say to a kid, hey, you want to go to school? No, let's look at the curriculum together. And they're just like, oh God, not that Latin word.
You're advocating the curriculum has bad brand. This is what you're telling me.
I think it has become synonymous for many kids as like, I'm snoozing now. Like I'm fascinated by brands like Crunch Labs, right? Like by Mark Rober, who's, sending out these kits to show kids how to think like an engineer. They're so excited about it. But if it were done in a more traditional classroom environment, all right, we're going to think like engineers, open your textbooks first of all, engineers would be like, open your textbooks. What are you talking about?
All of that, Chris, it's pedagogy. We're doing a little education 101. It is not curriculum. That's pedagogy. So pedagogy is how you bring your curriculum to life. Your curriculum is get kids to learn basic engineering principles. Like, there you go. It's a little more detailed than that. Then teachers get to choose how they could bring it to life. They could make an entire semester, do the Mark Rober kits, make them themselves. They could like make a box and figure out how to even design it. That could be a great way to learn. Or they could open a textbook and do the problem set and hand out a worksheet that you fill in. And you probably need, frankly, a little mix of both. Like, you do need some direct instruction. Kids need to be taught stuff. How you can do super creative thinking in math. You could be super creative by designing your own Mark Rober engineering box, right? But you would need something around which to be creative.
Well, there's a lot of parallels you're bringing up for me because what I always talk about with clients is there's the strategic what and the creative how.
You know what? Maybe we should rebrand curriculum as the strategic what and the creative house pedagogy.
And the creative how, what's interesting and dynamic and challenging about that is every teacher brings the creative how differently. You've got tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who are bringing the curriculum to life in different ways. And some are doing an amazing job and some are not, right? And so that's a huge variable.
Yeah, teachers make a huge difference. High quality teachers make a huge difference.
Yes, and we need to pay them more. That's my advocacy piece.
This is part of why we don't necessarily have a bunch of great teachers in every single school. There's lots of dedicated people who care and try really hard, but it is not a profession that our country lauds or pays very well.
Mm-hmm.
We definitely blame teachers for everything. It's also not a fun place to be. Like, teachers are being blamed for all sorts of things. It's really unfair. Like, they're there working their job as hard as they can, taking care of your kids.
And they've got like 40 different roles, which is a fantastic segue into this question I have for you, which is about the role of teachers. So on Ezra Klein's podcast, you talked with Ezra about rethinking education in an era of AI. And I feel like you can't talk about rethinking education without also talking about redefining the role of teachers, right? Because if AI can deliver content, answer questions, even grade papers, then what does it mean for the teacher? How does the teacher's role change? And what will they start to do more of now that some of their job is being assisted or largely replaced by AI? What do you think about how the role of teachers will be redefined?
I'm deep into this because we're in the middle of this Brookings School Task Force on AI and education, and teachers are using AI as productivity tools, as we all are in our jobs or in our personal lives. And it's saving a lot of time because there's a lot of back-end administrative time that's just like a pain in the butt. And sometimes they're just having better work-life balance, which makes them happier people, which gives them more energy to bring to the job, which is a good thing. But they also get more time to spend with kids. So I don't think there's a world where you're just going to sit kids in front of laptops with AI and they're just going to learn from it and then they go home all by themselves in silos, because we are hardwired to be in relationship with other people as human beings. And educators, a huge part of what they do is not even necessarily the knowledge transmission piece, the passing on of content knowledge. It's motivating, connecting, contextualizing, really trying to figure out how kids in their class can enter the content and understand it based on who they are. So it's a lot of interpersonal work. I do think that we will see in the future, and you're starting to see this already, new forms of teacher teams, perhaps. There's a lot of experimentation coming out of ASU on this, where they're looking at teacher teams, education workforce, where it's no longer one teacher, one classroom. It's a very lonely profession, actually, because you don't get a lot of peer time. You're just kind of by yourself with your kids. It can be really helpful to have, peer support and people to talk through stuff with, which teachers do in their break room, but they're so busy with their kids, it's hard. So some school districts are beginning to do this team teaching thing where you've got a couple classes together with a mix of teachers responsible for maybe 150 kids or 120 kids, and they each bring something different. So it could be a subject matter, but it could be attention to well-being or mental health, or it could be a real lively pedagogy, could be a really clear instructional practice, right? You can combine the talents across more people, which means you can bring the best of what each teacher brings to the kids, because you can really home in on the strengths of each teacher and put a little team together. And it's a really interesting model. And I think AI will help us move in that direction.
What's the most interesting or imaginative use of AI by students or by teachers that you've come across for making the invisible more visible when it comes to bringing lessons to life?
Well, I have one that is technology based, pre AI. It's just really expensive is the problem. But I think if costs come down, we'll see a lot more of it. Virtual reality. There is this great program with Dreamscape movie studio that brings chemistry lessons to life, brings biology lessons to life. And they started out university level, biology 101, I think it was, which kids were all forced to take. They hated it. But the kids who got virtual reality headset, and it's really just like 10, 15 minutes per class, it's not the whole time, loved Bio 101 and did so much better in it. Why? Because they were like in there looking at bacteria moving around in your, they have a curriculum of sort of immersive experiences that bring together learning concepts that can be really hard to wrap your head around just in a 2D paper and pencil world.
Well, I'm latching on to a phrase that you said, which is immersive experiences. And that immersion process, right? Like, you feel it in your body, you experience something, the learning goes so much deeper. I mean, in the Montessori method, there's so much hands-on tactile learning so that you're embodying the learning. Obviously turn to page whatever in your textbook is almost like the furthest from embodied immersive learning. It's the same thing with branding, right? So when we can create an experience that people can have, and not just a television commercial, people will remember it more.
I really hadn't realized how many parallels there are. You had told me when we chatted about like branding and learning and education.
That's what we do here. We connect the dots.
Impressive. Any insights yet, Chris?
They're happening all over the place right now. Just hearing you talk, I'm making notes on my end, and I'm going to reflect on them, and then hopefully I'll be able to articulate some insights by the end.
You're having an immersive experience. A podcast is an immersive learning experience.
It is. Well, one of the reasons why I started the podcast is because I like to be completely focused on the one person I'm talking to. No distractions. Don't have my phone anywhere. I'm just listening to you, and I am being one with you in this conversation. And I love that. I love that part of the job. I love doing that with in-depth interviews for clients, for research, focus groups, all of that. And so the podcast just lets me do a little bit more of it. I want to talk about how Mattel and OpenAI announced a partnership where they talked about collaborating to make AI-powered toys and games. And you wrote in your newsletter, I'm 30% excited to see what the new worlds kids might dive into, and 70% ready to run screaming for the hills. So let's start with the optimistic side of things. What are a couple of AI-powered toy concepts that you're excited about?
I have to say, when I wrote that newsletter, and again, this is a LinkedIn newsletter, Winthrop's World of Education, that was named by my wonderful research assistant. And I was like, doesn't that sound like Wayne's World? And she was like, I don't even know what you're talking about. I was like, okay, generational, no problem. So at the time I was envisioning, because they have Hot Wheels. At the time I was envisioning my own son, who was obsessed with Hot Wheels when he was, I think, 6 or 7. And I could just envision him being like, I want to make a loop-de-loop, like loop-de-loop, 17 loop-de-loops. And I wanted to fly over here. And then he doesn't know the physics. He doesn't have enough parts. And just being able to tell the AI, and then maybe they virtually create a Hot Wheels game. I was like, where's the physical embodiment? Maybe you virtually create it and they manufacture it and they send it to you. I mean, how cool would that be? Like, I think that kids would love it and it would fuel their creativity. The thing that made me run for the hills was just how powerful AI is. And our human creativity is something that I want us to protect because it's the fun part of life. Like, I'm a creative person and I love thinking of creative ideas. It's like, that's sort of what I do in my job, read stuff, think about how they fit together, think about it from a new angle. Like, what are people not seeing? And, kids are just so creative because everything is new and they see things fresh. They have no dominant logic. And I just had this feeling of, oh my gosh, is the AI going to come in and take away their space for expressing their creativity. And they're going to feel like they don't need to do it because the AI is being creative for them. How would my son have felt, right? Like, because a lot of time they're making stories in their minds. And what if the AI was like, I have a story, like it's just too intrusive? Maybe it won't be. And I don't think corporate interests are aligned with the learning sciences and children. They have different incentive structures. We talked about incentive structures from the beginning. Their incentive structures are to sell and make money, and that's fine in the world. Like that's what they're set up for. They create jobs. That's all good. But, at some point it crosses a line of sort of basic human development. And just because we can do something doesn't mean we should do something.
I mean, didn't we learn that from Jurassic Park?
Exactly. Honestly, I didn't think of Jurassic Park, but that was sort of the feeling, was like, wait a minute, we have evolved for millennia, and young people everywhere in the world are born these fonts of creativity. And that is sort of the human genius. And we collaborate and we use tools. Yes, we do use tools. AI is a new tool, but is it so powerful that it will be too intrusive that it erodes the core of who we are as humans?
That's a great question. I would like to lean toward the optimistic side and think that kids will find incredibly new and exciting ways to use these new tools, that it will enhance their creativity as opposed to diminishing certain creative muscles. I was thinking about the game I used to play when I was a kid, Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego? And I thought it could be really cool if there was like a more AI powered version. You're like interrogating suspects and you're getting real time voice based clues, and it could like integrate GPT style world knowledge and current events.
Carefully, so they don't hallucinate and aren't fake and from the dark web. But yes.
Yes, absolutely. Carefully. Kids could learn techniques for finding out, is that actually true? Because
yes, that'd be great.
in investigative reporting, people might tell you a lie or a fib, and you've got to go get multiple sources to corroborate or confirm the story.
I love that idea, but that to me is a great example. What you're describing is carefully designed and carefully orchestrated to enhance our lived embodied experience and supports a kid's experience of the game. There's a lot of design work that went into what you're talking about. I guess the 70% is that I worry that there won't be that thoughtfulness going into it. And it will just sort of be super intrusive, super eroding, because we see that in school with AI. It used to be that ed tech products, the main way you kind of got to kids and student facing ed tech products, the main way is through schools. There was some sort of intermediary. And now kids are accessing generative AI, chatbots, large language models outside of school all the time. They are rewriting their homework. They're doing their homework. They're doing their problem sets. They're doing all these things, on Snapchat with their AI friend. And, it does beg the question, we need to redesign education, but it also to me shows that companies' incentives are to get this thing out there as fast as they can to as many people and students. And that's their incentive structure. It's not, can I carefully orchestrate learning experience that will unleash, not diminish kids' thinking abilities?
Well, that goes back to what we were saying before, because there's that competitive rush to get your product out there before somebody else and, let the chips fall where they may kind of situation. I tend to use a lot of analogies, and I feel like the analogy I think of a lot is some muscles will grow and some muscles will shrink. They'll talk about in physical therapy, you have an imbalance. Because, you go like, I'm doing squats all the time. I'm doing these different things. They say, yeah, but your adductors are smaller or not as strong as your abductors. And so you need to rebalance or find the balance between those muscle groups. And I think, if you think about 30 years ago, we all knew probably like 10 or 15 phone numbers. I don't remember anybody's phone number now.
The problem is, Chris, it is not like the calculator. It is not like GPS. The problem is, it is such a powerful technology. Are the muscles that are going to get weaker, are they our core muscles? And we're going to have zero core muscles and just a bunch of limbs that aren't connected and can't actually walk. Like, that is what I'm worried about. It might not happen, but it appears that is a real possibility. because it is such a powerful technology. Humans have cognitively offloaded, which is exactly the term you talked about. We've used tools to expand our ability and our memory forever. Like I'm not anti-technology. I love technology. I love the wheel. I love the fork. I love the refrigerator. I love spell check. I love Google Maps. I love, it's just, this is a qualitatively different type of technology. And it might be different for adults. I'm not sure if it is actually, but for kids, literally learning to think it's their core. We're atrophying their entire core muscle group. And will they be able to walk? I don't know.
Because I've heard that example many times. People say, it's like the calculator. We didn't stop learning how to do math, but we're reaching for these analogies.
And keep your kids off it until we figure it out, Chris, because I'm telling you, I'm really worried.
Okay, we're at the speed round. Rebecca, what was your favorite subject in school?
My favorite subject in high school was global studies because I grew up in a pretty rural town in Oregon and I got to learn about the world. I thought it was fascinating.
And what's your favorite word in English or any other language?
Oh my gosh. The first thing that comes to mind is rambunctious. It's fun to say and it's good to be rambunctious.
Were you rambunctious as a kid?
I think I was, but I think my parents channeled me into a lot of gardening and helping, and I had my extracurriculars.
I think you just made rambunctious a very positive word. I think most people think of rambunctious as somewhat negative because it's disruptive.
Yeah.
But rambunctious is a great word.
Yeah, you got to have some chutzpah, it's better than being super passive.
Now, do you remember, when did you have your first aha moment? Were you a kid? What was that thing that happened where you were like, doesn't anybody notice this?
One of my first memories, and I have a vivid memory, and it was visceral. I remember how I felt, to your point of, is learning embodied, was on my third birthday. I remember having a birthday party. I don't remember so much about that, but I remember we all went outside and there was a hill. It was probably like 2 feet long, to be honest. It seemed huge to me. And I had never rolled down this hill before because the big kids rolled down the hill. But I was 3. And they were like, come on, you want to roll down the hill? And had this feeling like, I am big. I'm a person. I'm a real person. Look at me.
If you were talking to a 5-year-old, how would you describe what you do?
I would say I talk to a lot of people. I read a lot of books and come up with ideas about how to make schools more fun.
That sounds like a great job. I'd like to do that. Speaking of books, what's the most recent good book you've read? Or if you prefer, a movie or TV show that you've watched?
My youngest son and I are reading sort of fantasy fiction together these days. So we just read The Six of Crows and the Crooked Kingdom. They're very good. If you like fantasy.
How old is your son?
He is 14.
Okay. All right. Very good. I will make a note of that book. What's a subject that you recently got super interested in and you just went down a rabbit hole because of insatiable curiosity?
Oh, I can tell you exactly this. Lip gloss. So I have a household of boys. I get no tips from girls growing up who are obsessed with makeup. So says my co-author Jenny with her 2 girls. And I have very dry lips. And I was like, this is killing me. This chapstick business doesn't work. It doesn't work. My lips are still dry. I'm drinking lots of water. Part of it is age. But yeah, I went down a rabbit hole of lip gloss. I can't tell you how many Gwyneth Paltrow lip gloss videos I watched. And then I bought her lip gloss, which I love, by the way.
I was just going to say, any lip gloss executives listening, Rebecca Winthrop is looking for you for some help. But
that could be a great perk. Send me some free Goop lip gloss.
She's on a national book tour right now. Your lip gloss is going to be seen by tons of people. Is there an education-related brand or toy brand that you really admire or that you think to yourself, that is so good, I wish I'd come up with that?
I have to say Legos because I have a huge soft spot in my heart for Lego, and part because their foundation funds my work. I have been to the Lego headquarters many times. I've been to the Lego Idea House, which I would, if you ever get a chance, go. It's in Denmark. It is unlike nothing else. They have a 3-story tree of creativity, all made of Legos, and then it's so cool. You can go to the cafeteria and they have robot Lego people serving you, and you make a little Lego. You're like, I want, and you make Lego like that sandwich and you stick it in and it comes out, the food comes. Anyways, so I have yes, Legos. I love them. I have many reasons to love them, and my kids have played with them incessantly.
Have you by chance heard of something called Clixo toys?
Oh, no, I have not.
Take a look at that. I think you're going to love them. If you love Lego, I think you're going to love Clixo.
Okay, I'll look it up.
What is one of the most interesting jobs you had before you got into the work you do now that has helped you do your job better?
I spent some time doing stream surveys in Oregon at one point, which is you work for the Fish and Wildlife Department and you put on high rubber sort of overalls and you were mapping a watershed, which is where a river and all the tributaries, and you're trying to make sure that people aren't cutting down trees in a way that would like block off the streams and not let people downstream have the water and hurt fishes and all this type of stuff. I just remember you would have a partner, but I was basically, she and I were out there on our own, really in the middle of nowhere. And I was like, well, guess we're going to have to figure this out. So that did help me with the off you go, figure it out. Good luck.
Yes, the problem solver within you and the figure it out jobs.
Yes.
And finally, what is a piece of advice that you got early on in your life or in your career that you still remember to this day or that you think of often?
You know, I can't remember a very specific piece of advice, but I do remember generally a feeling of sort of the adults in my life, be they my parents or maybe professors at college, or saying, you know, just there's no harm in trying something. Go ahead, just give it a whirl, try it, see what you think. So that has been basically my entire approach to my professional career. I don't know, let's try it, see. If it doesn't work, try something else.
Well, I think it's a great philosophy. I am so grateful that you decided to just try it with me in terms of coming on the podcast.
Absolutely.
And even though it seems like our worlds are so worlds apart, I hope that this conversation, as you said earlier, wow, there's actually quite a bit of overlap between branding and education and learning. So thank you so much for taking the time today.
My utter pleasure. It was really fun, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Thanks again to our guest, Rebecca Winthrop, Senior Fellow and Director of the Center for Universal Education at the Brookings Institution, and co-author of the Disengaged Teen. If you want to connect with Rebecca, you can find her on LinkedIn. And while you're there, make sure you subscribe to her newsletter, Winthrop's World of Education, which is full of aha moments about education and how to engage young people in today's tech-driven world. If you enjoyed today's episode, please give us 5 stars on your favorite podcast platform and share it with colleagues and clients who could use some inspiration. Just send them a link and say, "Here you are, my friend, insights." If you're looking for even more ideas and aha moments, head over to chriskochek.com. There you can find some of my newest online courses, case studies, and creative exercises. You can even sign up for one of my insight building workshops, where I show you firsthand how to build effective insights faster. The workshops are great for helping with new business pitches and for creating culturally contagious campaigns. That's it for Season 3. We'll be back in the spring for Season 4 with even more exciting guests from the world's most interesting and innovative minds. Special thanks, as always, to Megan Palmer for editing, sound mixing, and production support. Until next time, keep looking for patterns, finding contradictions, and asking, what if, more often.